Welcome to the Unscripted podcast. My name's Corby LaCroix, and the song you're hearing right now is called Great and Mighty One, available on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your music. But for now, recording from the Unscripted studio at the Junction in Old Hilliard, here's your host and my friend, Aaron Conrad.
Great Redeemer, God of grace.
All right, everybody, welcome to Unscripted from my basement. And I promise you all keep hearing this, but I've seen it. It is real. It is happening. The Junction, it is happening. Thank you, Corby, for my introduction. I'm going to go ahead and just kick it over to my guest right now. Let him introduce himself. We've had an awesome pregame.
I'm excited.
I wish I could record our pregame because Patrick and I have had a wonderful pregame, but we didn't. So Let me go ahead and let my guest introduce himself.
No, I love it, man. Well, thank you for having me, number one, on your podcast. My name is Patrick. I'm a pastor here in Columbus. Our family, along with 11 other people, moved to Columbus, middle of a pandemic, to launch a brand new church, specifically with people with doubts, questions about faith, and whether you're a follower of Jesus or not, people who are wrestling with questions when it comes to faith. And I did it with my college roommates, which is kind of fun. So I did it with my best friends in the whole world. And now we all have kids and families, and it's been kind of a wild ride. And so anyway, I want to say this to you too. I'm so honored to be on your podcast, because when we moved here in June, we started looking at even Columbus area podcasts, and we came across yours early on. So I've been a listener or a watcher for quite a bit, Aaron. So thanks for having me on, man. I'm excited to be here.
Well, what an honor for me to hear that, because this never started off that way. But I'm so thankful that God has allowed and created space for whatever this thing is and whatever it will become. And even if it becomes nothing else, I've been able to meet my heroes and make new friends. And so I'm thankful for that. And Ryan, was one of our early guests. And so right. I'm thankful for literally every guest, and the fact that each one has helped build whatever this thing is. I don't know. I can't put a name on it. I can't even claim any responsibility. I just click record, and Ryan was gracious enough to come on and tell us your early story. And so, so let's catch up. So why don't you tell your story, or your version of the story, and just tell us about Nuvo, man. Nuvo Church, right? So why don't you just start there? Let's tell us about Nuvo. Why'd you start it? Why are you here? All that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and then you can compare with Ryan to see which one's actually more accurate. That'd be fun. He'll tell you his. That's right. It'd be great. So honestly, our church plant, I kind of say it started for us in college. So me, my roommate Zach, and then my other roommate Ryan, we're all working together, and then my now wife Emily. All four of us are working at this small student ministry. Maybe 30 students or so, all going to college full time, doing this on the side with a budget of about $500 a year. That's how we rolled in middle school ministry at the time. And we just dreamed about what it would be like to plant a church. And inevitably at 19 or 20, we thought we could do it better than anybody else that we were working with at the time. Right. We would stay up till 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and dream about that. And then we all graduated and went our separate ways. And we left and got to work at some really great places. Like my wife and I, we ended up in Atlanta, Georgia, working at North Point Community Church down there. She's the much cooler part of our family. She was creative director down there, at one of the campuses. I'm like intern, the whole deal. But we got to do that. And that was so fun. Ryan, I kind of joke, he was on your podcast. Ryan's one of my smart friends. You know what I mean? He and Zach are both much smarter than me, much more talented, and they're phenomenal. And so he's executive pastor of a large multi-site church. And then Zach was creative director. And so we all left and had these amazing experiences. And my wife and I most recently were in Michigan, and we were pastoring a church up in Traverse City. And we felt like God was saying, hey, it's time to do this. Truthfully, between me and you, we had 2 kids. I had a 1-year-old at the time and a 3-year-old. Wow. So this felt like the worst possible time to not have consistent health insurance. You know what I mean? Like, right. How do we do that? And I'll tell you, man, people were just so generous. The church that we were at, so many other churches got passionate about what we were doing and helped us get started. And that would have been, 2019 is when we were really kind of working on that, still working where we were. And the cool thing is I called Zach and Ryan. I said, hey, here's what we feel like God's calling us to do. We love to do this with you. And within a few months, they both resigned their jobs and fundraised their salaries to come. And then we all geared up to move to Columbus. And then, a global pandemic happens that we weren't expecting. And yeah, so we moved here in the middle of that. We tried to meet people. We had a whole plan for how we were going to do it, and that didn't work with the pandemic. So we just started, cold calling people on Facebook. That's literally what we did to get started.
Wow.
And then, yeah, so that's kind of how it started. And now it's kind of bloomed into we're doing preview services ahead of a September launch and doing that sort of thing now. But yeah, it's been a wild ride for sure.
Well, and you said, and I think, my wife and I have supported others, but I don't never know when I don't never know where this podcast will land. So just for anybody's, just for the landscape, so people understand. Yeah. When you talked about generating support, I mean, that's like me getting on the phone. Again, I don't know who my audience is. So that's like me getting on the phone and saying, hey, I want to do this thing. Will you support me? And other people getting behind you financially. That's right. And that's tough, man. It's really tough, especially as you said, we were probably pre-pandemic, but even during a pandemic, dollars got short for a lot of people. Some people lost their jobs, some people. And so all of a sudden I committed to, and we've supported ministries, we've supported, various things, compassion, other things like that. Yeah. I know we got to a place, one of the most heartbreaking days in my life was when we got to a place where we financially, because of some things that had happened, could not support compassion. And that was terrible for us. Like we committed to that. We wanted to support kids that we'll probably never meet this side of heaven. And hopefully one day I do meet them in heaven, to just give them a hug and say, I'm glad you're here. But that's tough. And so you all launched a church and your staff went out and got funding. Am I saying that correctly? Like your staff went out and got funding in the midst of or right before a pandemic and then had to maintain that. That's a huge leap of faith, almost without a parachute. Is that fair?
That's so right. Yeah. And honestly, man, I mean, it's uncomfortable, especially, you have kids. I mean, when you have young kids too, and my wife and I are pregnant. We have one of my, it's definitely a step of faith. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah. 3 weeks before launch. So it's fine.
It's fine. Everything's fine.
It's fine. Yeah. But I'll say this, and I love your heart in this too, as somebody who supports it. But like it really is a testament for people to say, we believe in the mission, but even more than that, probably we believe in you, because this thing didn't exist in November of 2019. And people sacrificed and they gave, and that's everybody. People we knew, people we didn't know. Some of our biggest givers are people that we never would have expected, and they just said, we believe that Columbus needs a church like that. And it's really humbling. And really, I feel like it's just God kind of moving those pieces together. So, yeah.
And it is God, because I think the other thing too, like I would say, is it's almost like launching, I've talked a little pregame. Again, y'all should have heard that pregame. It was
awesome. Unbelievable.
It was so good. Anyway, for those that didn't hear, there are some major league teams, again, pardon my pun, my analogy. There are some big old major league team. It's almost like trying to launch a college football team in Columbus. Yeah. When you got Ohio State in your backyard. Yeah. Is that fair to say you're trying to launch a church when there are some big old behemoth churches, mega churches in Columbus? And again, no disrespect to them. They're fantastic at what they do. What's it like being the pastor of a brand new church in a city that has some big old churches that kind of rule the marketplace, so to speak? 100%. And I know I just broke every theological rule, but you know what I mean? Like there's some big old churches out there, right? I mean, what's that like trying to launch a church in the face of that?
I'll tell you this. I'm so glad. This is fun. Nobody's ever asked me this publicly before. This is fun. This is like back porch conversations already. I love it.
Unscripted. That's what we do.
It's unscripted. That's what we do. So I'll say it on Unscripted. I've never said this before. I would say we had 5 cities. Columbus was last on my list. It really was. And, it's all like the New York, LA, Chicago. And we planned a trip to go to Indianapolis. Indianapolis was the 4th one. And we had like 4 days in Indianapolis, 1 day in Columbus, right? That's how much I wanted to come to Columbus at the time. You know what I mean? I remember my wife, we're driving around Indy, we're having all these conversations like, this is good. Like, this feels good, right? Like, it's going to, that. And then we get to the outskirts of Dublin for this last year. We got both of our kids in the backseat, the back of the van. And we had been praying that God would speak to us as clearly as possible about the city. And And I'll never forget this. I felt like just impressed, like this is where you're supposed to be. And I didn't want to be in Ohio at the time. Columbus wasn't really on my radar for that. And I hear my wife at the exact same time making the kind of noise, and I'm like, I literally said this out loud. I said,
you gotta see the video. Anybody listening, you have to
watch that. You gotta watch that. You know what I'm talking about too, right? Like crap.
Sorry, go ahead.
She says, I didn't do that, but anyway. So I remember going, oh crap, like it's Columbus. Yeah. And then my very second thought, I've never told anybody else this like this. Second thought was, but I know one of the fastest growing churches is in Columbus. And I know this is, I'm a church geek. I don't really have a lot of hobbies. And I was like, why would we ever plant anywhere near, and I probably went through a couple of months of trying to wrestle that down. And so what I started doing is I started visiting some of the churches. I went to Rock City. You and I were talking about Rock City. It's a phenomenal church. Amazing church. I went to other places. And I remember going, so are we actually different? And then what we did is I took a camera, like a DSLR camera downtown. I don't know if you're familiar with Humans of New York. Are you familiar with Humans of New York? No. It's a great Instagram account. It's a guy who just tells people stories. He's like a street photographer. Take a picture. And then he asked them questions that he's doing. And I'm pretty introverted naturally. I was like, if I can walk up to people, and ask them their story, almost pretend to be a great, whatever, like a street photographer. And so I did, and I went downtown, and I personally interviewed 107 people doing that. And this is what got me. 107 people, 106 of them self-identified as an agnostic. And I went, I know how big these churches are.
Hold on.
Yes, yeah.
You interviewed 107.
That's right.
And 106 said they're agnostic. I just want to make sure we didn't blow through that.
Yep. That's right.
Wow.
Which is obviously not all the demographics of Columbus. But I would say,
but still, that's a huge, look, 100 out of 100. I mean, even if you went 100, that, what is that? 99%? If you did 100 people, 99% say they're agnostic. Unbelievable. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I'm so glad.
I don't want to cross past that.
Yeah. It is staggering the number of people who would just go, I think there's something out there. I don't know that we can know what it is. And my conversations led towards like anywhere from like that to a stopping point to my favorite one was, maybe it's like the Matrix, and we had this long,
pill and a red pill.
Yeah, it really what it was. I finally just went, I was like, well, what if you got to know the architect? You know what I mean? Like that was kind of my, or whatever they call it. But I did this over days. I would take their picture and we would hear their stories. I talked to a woman downtown and I didn't know this at the time, but I got the picture back and she had a black eye. And one of the questions I would ask is, what's one of the things that you think about when you think about God? And she said this. She said, if there's a God up there, he's obviously not looking out for me. She goes, and one of the other questions was like, what do you fear? And she goes, I just fear my hatred towards men. And when I looked at the picture, she had a black eye. Now, I don't know if those two things are connected, but probably,
Probably, right.
And I just remember thinking this. I was like, Columbus has a lot of phenomenal churches. But even if all the churches were filled, Columbus has, a lot of people there. We would not be able to contain the amount of people that need a relationship with Jesus. And then for us, what I feel like is unique is we're kind of bent towards the person who would either say I'm a follower of Jesus, but there's a group of questions that I've boxed up and I've put on the side, or I'm not a follower of Jesus, or I used to be, or I've deconstructed my faith. And I have these questions that create a barrier for me in terms of actually having an active relationship with Jesus. And I think for us, we said, that's a problem that we want to figure out. If we could solve a problem, that would be the one we want to solve. How do we help you, for me, if those people who are followers of Jesus, unbox those questions and deal with it. And for those people who are not followers of Jesus, go, hey, there is a God that is knowable, and let's talk about how you do it. So anyway, so that's how I got over it. I finally went, you know what? We need more of the great things that are already happening. And we have a unique sort of parking place in that parking lot. So
100%. I always say, and this is a bad analogy, but for all the Apple iPhones that are out there, there's a ton of Android phones, Samsung, Motorola, you name. Look, there's a lot of phones that people carry, and we know when we get a text from them and it's green. I like how Apple trolls people, make their text green. But at the end of the day, look, there's a ton of people that don't have an Apple iPhone, and so I think there's a space, and that's a really bad analogy. But at the end of the day, there's a space for other things, not just Apple. That's thank God for that. And literally thank God for that there's other churches. And so you mentioned a word, I wrote it down. So if you ever see me look, I'm not paying attention, I'm making notes. Because awesome. We are Unscripted. You said deconstructing. I know just recently I was talking to someone who's deconstructing their faith. So as someone who grew up in the church and was there every time the doors were open with my family, not because I wanted to, I think, is that fair to say that that's who's deconstructing their quote unquote faith, is people that were raised in the church or raised by a family that went to church or insert whatever here, but is that who's deconstructing or at least asking deeper questions? And so when I go back to Ryan's interview, what really fascinated me with him is that you all are leaving space for those questions. That's different. Is that fair to say that that's what Nuvo is a lot about, is giving space to ask questions?
That's right. Absolutely. 100%. Honestly, I would say, and I can say this to you and everybody listening to Unscripted, but I would say
like the two.
I don't think that's right. That's right. Just me and you and everyone else.
Basically. My wife. I didn't listening to that.
This is probably running in the back. That's all right. I love it.
Sorry, go ahead.
That's so true. Oh my gosh, that's so fun.
It's true.
I think it is really. I think for me, what I would say on the deconstructing side and what we found is there's certainly people that were churched, de-churched, grew up in our student ministries. And then they got to a place. Some people get to college and they take a philosophy class. Somebody pokes one hole in the Jenga thing, it all comes crumbling down. There's certainly those stories. But on deconstructing in particular, what I find more times than not, and this has happened a lot over the last probably 4 to 5 years, is there's a group of people who associated certain things with an evangelical perspective, and then they experience things either within the church or within the broader church movement that cause them to go, that doesn't feel like Jesus, or that doesn't feel like the way things should be. And then from there, they started looking other places to look at, kind of other ways of thinking. And so I like to talk about it this way. if you think about 4 chairs, you've probably heard an analogy like this before. There's the 4 chair where the extremities on either side. And in the middle, if you think about theology, there's the person who leans progressive, the person who leans conservative. A lot of people who are on the deconstruction side grew up in the extremities of conservative perspectives or thinking. They migrated their way through, but the thing that they felt most at home with ended up being such an extremity on the progressive side of thinking. And what I found is they started deconstructing their faith, and this is what we want to figure out how to solve. And then it leads them to a place where they feel like an apathy towards some of it, and then it oftentimes leads to a version of agnosticism on the other side of it, where they would say either all things are leading to the same God, or we just can't know, so why would I put forth the effort? And so people who are deconstructing, and this is what, again, we're really passionate about, is going, there has to be churches and there has to be places where you can come with whatever question, whatever leaning you have, and be able to find a place where you can not just discover an answer, but a group of people moving in the same direction to discover truth. And I think that's what we're trying to figure out how to do is we talk about the expansive table. How do we create a table where we can have the bread and wine together and sit across from someone who probably will disagree with us in some version of the theological thing, but at the same time have a centeredness, not just on Jesus' teaching, but the person of Jesus. And I think that's what we're trying to figure out how to create and let people ask whatever questions they want, which brings a lot of great questions, So, but yeah, anyway.
Here comes a heavy question on that note. Do you feel the weight of that as the pastor of a church that is giving space for people to ask tough questions? Do you feel the weight of that as a pastor?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. I think transparently, I used to feel the weight of having a really solid apologetic point by point answer. You know what I'm saying? Like I wanted to be the next Frank Jurek or Storm and Norman Geisler. You know what I mean? That was me in college. I assumed everybody who wasn't a church person just wanted to argue Dawkins. The older that I get and the more conversations I have, a lot of people who are deconstructing, even whether they say it out loud or not, and this isn't everybody has a unique deconstruction story, but But a lot of people experience some sort of hurt, pain, or trauma that's connected to church, evangelicalism, or even pastor, that sort of thing, which spurred them on. What we're finding, and the way that helps me navigate that, is to go, we're dealing with a human being on the other side of the table. And very rarely are they wanting to really argue limited atonement with me. They want to understand how all of it fits together, and how they can process their own humanity within what they find in scriptures, whether they believe it's authoritative or not. And so I think as a pastor, and again, there's a lot of different, people don't call me Pastor Patrick or I'm just Patrick. I'm just a dude. I'm a person who's on the journey with somebody to point them to Jesus and to wrestle through kind of the way they both approach the Bible, God, and the resurrection. And so I think for me, I carry that weight, but at the same time, I've learned over the years that the weight for me personally isn't so much about how do I have the right answer and authoritatively just tell you, but it's, hey, let's deal with all of the other stuff that's wrapped into your spirituality and humanity. And when we get through that, as we move through that, oftentimes their ability to see the person and power of Jesus becomes a lot more clear. So that's what we found, at least.
Have you found, and I'm asking you, these are not softballs now, I'm throwing curveballs, and nobody uses curveballs. So and I don't throw my son throws a great curveball. I don't throw a curveball. But that's like I don't even know the grip, but whatever. But have you found that with COVID, you launched during COVID, I think all of us would agree that we all know, in the back of our mind, we all know that COVID and mental stress, mental wellness are going to one day really pop up on us. Today, June 2nd, is when we're recording. There's no rules today. Governor DeWine took all the rules off, so no rules. But at the end of the day, there's residual from the last year. It didn't just go away overnight, and it has nothing to do with COVID. It has to do with myself, gained a ton of weight during COVID. We all dealt, quote unquote, again, if you're watching or listening, we all dealt with COVID differently. And I think the mental side of it's going to be where we really, really deal with it, quote unquote, deal with it. Have you found as a pastor, or are you prepared as a pastor for what's going to come out of COVID and the mental wellness of others? Again, this is a curveball because this is not an easy question. I assume you all, that, because I think that's what we're really going to have to unpack over the next 12 months is, okay, cool, we're open again. You can go to baseball games. You can fill the stadium. There's some stuff we have to deal with that we can't just bury, because if we do, we're all going to be in a really bad place. So, and I don't want to go dark on us, but you know what I mean? Like as a pastor, 100%. have you prepared for that, thought about that? Do you worry about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. We do. We think about it a lot. In fact, I think the middle of the pandemic, we're doing online services once a month. Right. I want to say it was like our second or third one. We just decided, as much as I'd like to do this other series, we decided to do a mental health series in the middle of the pandemic. And we're going to do another one. I think our second series after launch is about this. And we brought in a psychologist, Dr. LaTanya Carter, that's a good friend of mine. And we talked through that. I agree with you. I think what's going to happen is the effect of the last year, it's not going to bubble up immediately, but it will bubble up. And for many people, it'll feel like a surprise. It'll be like a conversation with your spouse. Where did that come from? Like, why? I am not upset about you not putting up the milk.
Right.
But I'm upset about something. I don't know what. And especially, this, for a lot of men in particular, I think those things are going to bubble up. And I think it's going to be relationally, but then I think when it comes to theology and faith, it's also going to be directed at God. Like the questions that people are going to be asking, and I think are asking, well, why did you allow this to happen? Why did I lose this loved one? Questions about suffering, questions about jobs. Jobs. Yeah. Finances, businesses that came to an end, Right. I have a 5-year-old son. I told you earlier, I'm pretty introverted. He's the most extroverted human I think I've ever met. And I've never thought about a 5-year-old being isolated in a year. How do we navigate that? How do we talk? So I would say, I think those things are bubbling up. I think the church, including ours, has to be prepared to not be the ones, I'm not a licensed psychologist, but how do we partner with those people who can come alongside of the churches that we're part of and invite them into the conversation, and also work as pastors, as leaders, as churches to remove any of the stigma about having the hard conversations and asking the hard questions about being healthy when it comes to our mental state. So I would say we're thinking a lot about it. We're trying to figure out how do we navigate it well. But I absolutely think it is here, and it is coming, and it will continue to come for years in the future. And the local church, I think, has to work towards that for sure. So,
and I plug my previous guest talked about some of this as well, but I think it's what I said on that episode, again plug, is guys like Kevin Love in the NBA. Just this week, again, I don't know when people will hear this, but I don't even know her name, but there's a tennis player that pulled out of whatever tennis match she was in because of mental wellness. We've seen this now, and what I love about this sounds really weird to say. What I love about where we're at, I don't love that we're at this place, but I love where we're at as a society, is it's no longer not okay to say I'm not okay. And I do you know what I mean? Like, I don't mean that in any way other than what I said. I love that we're saying it's not okay. I'm not okay. And that's okay as employers, as churches, as whatever else, as fans of tennis. We can look at this athlete and say, good for her. Because I think deep down, most of us are going to say, you know what, I'm not okay either, especially after the last year. And so, and I don't want to stray away from where our conversation, but what I do know about you all, and what I believe about what you all are doing, is you're making a space for people to say, I'm not okay. And I have questions and I have issues. Am I saying that correctly? Because that's, again, I'm a fan in the stands of what you all are doing. But I'm a fan, and is it fair to say that that's what you all are doing? Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, in this, I love it. In our preview service style right now, we actually set out a bunch of round tables, and we want you in a circle with people, and even in those spaces, to actually begin to open up and talk to people and feel like you can be vulnerable enough with people and continue to move in that direction. And that any question, anything that you're wrestling through is okay. Now, I will also say this, and this is if I was going to challenge leaders, if I can do that, can I do that for like 30 seconds? I would say to any
people
leader,
listening, 100%.
That's right. Me, you, it's perfect. Yeah, no one else.
My wife running right now.
That's right.
Tell her.
I love it so much. My mom's going to watch this episode too, but that's fine.
So we're up to four.
We're up to 4. Exponential growth. It's happening, Aaron.
Snowball.
I would say to every leader, like what you just said about our society saying it's okay, getting past that, it's okay not to be okay. That's what I would say for every leader. We have to model that vulnerability for our church to be successful in creating that space. I have to be willing to be vulnerable about the things that I struggle with as well, and to bake that into the culture. And I think that's true of every business leader. This isn't just the church. Every business going to have people that are coming back to work or working, or people that are new at their jobs. They're going to be wrestling through all of the same things. And the best leaders, the best managers are going to figure out how to be appropriately vulnerable and create spaces wherever it is that we're leading for people to bring the fullness of their own brokenness and humanity to that moment and be able to come alongside of them in a healthy way. And so as a church, we're absolutely trying to do that. We would say that we want our church to be the safest place for you to ask any question or wrestle through anything that you're dealing with. We think the local church should be the first place that comes to mind when you ask questions about your humanity and your life. But it requires us to go first. It requires us to be vulnerable first.
Right.
So, yeah.
And I was just going to say that as you were talking, I'm going to go ahead and do it on the podcast. I'm not okay.
Yeah.
I'm not okay.
Me either.
If you're listening to, and I'm about to get teared up. Anybody listening to this, I'm not okay. I'm not. The last year's done a number on me, physically, mentally, emotionally. It's done a year, and I'm not okay. And if you're listening to this, it's okay to say I'm not okay. I don't care if I have a podcast and a microphone in front of me and whatever guest I've had on. no disrespect to you whatsoever. I'm actually glad we're here because we're having the conversation. I'm not okay. And if you're listening to this and you're not okay, then find someone that'll help you, because we're all, I don't think anyone is okay. I think we're all dealing with this. And what I love about what you guys are doing is that you're making it okay to not be okay. And a lot of churches say that. It looks good on Instagram post. And I'm not knocking any church. I'm really not. This isn't about churches. It's about being real about the fact that, there's a lot of companies that say a lot of stuff, but at the end of the day, when you dig in, they don't mean it. They just say it to be cool on Instagram. And this has nothing to do. Please don't hear that and think I'm talking about a church. I'm not. What I'm saying is, I think there's so many people that have been to a church that maybe said that, and then they didn't find that. And that's really hard. That's why I asked about the weight. It's really hard to back it up. Because if you're going to be true to that, if I've come to whatever church it is, and I expect to find somebody that says that I'm okay to not be okay, I better find, or I'm going to be gone to the next one, or I may be gone in general. I may be gone completely. So that's why I asked the question about the weight. But I love what you guys are doing. I really do. And let me go ahead and just say, I have a coworker that has visited your services and loves it. Absolutely loves what you all are doing, and you're only in the preview stage. You haven't even launched yet. So not to take it out of that situation or that conversation, because that's a very deep conversation that we just had, I think, and it's fair. And if you're driving and you're listening to that, again, please know that I'm not okay, and that's okay. I'm willing to admit I've come to a place where I'm willing to admit that I'm not. And there's people. What I've done though is surround myself with people that will care for me and understand that I can say I'm not okay right now, and they can help me. And this, if you're hearing this and you haven't yet, and if you're in Columbus specifically, that's why I wanted to bring that up. I think there's a lot of churches, but there's one in particular that I'm talking to right now that really does care and wants to help you unpack why you're not okay. Did I just say all that okay?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Can I get this recording? That's so good. I'm like, yes, absolutely.
It's all yours.
Yeah. No, that's so good. I'm so glad you said that. And thank you for leading the way in vulnerability and for saying that too. I mean, that's inspiring and that's beautiful, man. Absolutely. So,
I think we have to give the gift of going second. And what it takes is somebody to say it first. And then when we do that, man, it's amazing what'll happen in our lives. So, so what is next for Nuvo? What are the mile markers moving forward? You said you're going to launch in September. What can I do to find out more?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks so much, guys. We can go to nuvochurch.org. That's our website. We're on Instagram at Nuvo. Everybody's like, how do you spell Nuvo? N-U-V-O. That's how we spell it. I'm sure there's a wine company that spells it a whole lot cooler than we do, but N-U-V-O is how you do it, right?
Completely different thing.
That's a completely different thing. That's right. Yeah, it's a different. That's communion. It's different. nuvochurch.org. Find out more information. We meet roughly every other week right now. We're at the Marriott Northwest right off of exit 15, but we're only going to be there for a little while longer. So as we get to August, we're actually going to be in Bridge Park. So we're going to be meeting at the Exchange in Bridge Park. That's where we'll be launching. We'll continue to bring preview services in August, and then September 19th is when we launch Bridge Park, right there at the Exchange. And so there's a lot of events. We have all sorts of things. You connect to women's events and men's stuff. We end up at Topgolf a lot, or Penn's Mechanical Company, and do stuff for families. If you want to just kind of get to know us first, I totally get wanting to hang out before you become Facebook official. But yeah, so that's, but yeah, so that's what's going on with us. So, and you can find all of that stuff at our website, nuvochurch.org. So.
And I'll have all the links in the post as well, based on everything you just said. So, but if I'm listening to this, let's just say again, not to go dark again on us a little bit, but let's go gray. And instead of just dark, let's just go a little gray. If I'm driving, I heard this and I want to reach out to someone. First of all, you can reach out to me, Aaron@AaronConrad.com. Simple enough. Yeah. And if I can't answer it, then I'll put you in touch with Patrick. But if they want to reach out to you and say, Pastor, I have questions, or I'm dealing with this, what's your contact info? If you don't mind giving that.
100%. Let me give you my cell phone number. It's a Knoxville number, so don't judge me too hard. But it's 865-306-2239. 865-306-2239. Or you can email me at patrick@nuvochurch.org. And all that's on our website. I think my cell phone number is on the website. We'd love to talk to you. We love to connect. and absolutely, and anything like that. So please reach out.
Well, I've loved our time. Is there anything else we need to cover? Because I know.
Oh gosh, this was so much fun, man. No, I'm like, I love it.
All right, well, let's do it again. First of all, we'll have you on again. Because I want to follow the progression, right? I want to see how things are going, and I just want to continue to follow because I believe in what you all are doing. I think it's different, and it's but at the same time, it's not. It's church, and the church is here. I was just talking to somebody today about how the church has the ability to, especially in the world of issues and things. The church is the one place that has the ability to rally and to do things without the red tape of the government and other things, although that's changing by the day. But anyway, that's a
right.
Conversation. But anyway, you all can rally and do things, and you have God has still cleared the path for the church to be the church. And in a time that we're in right now, man, I support any church that is trying to make a difference, and you all make a difference. 106 out of 107, man. I won't forget that. Was it 100? Was that? Did I say that right?
Yeah, that's impressive. Yeah.
106 out of 107 people, and I believe Columbus, if I remember it, the statistic is somewhere in the 80% range of unchurched. As large of a city as Columbus is, and although there are some massive churches in Columbus doing massive things. All respect to them. I think it's around the 80% mark of the Columbus market alone is unchurched, which is crazy. So that doesn't surprise me because it's almost statistically proven that if I took a camera out, 106 of 107 would be agnostic. So, man, we believe in what you're doing. You have a fan forever in me, a friend forever. We had a lot of fun today. I'm so thankful for your time. Thank you for your contact info. And is there anything else that we need to get or any other links that I'm missing before we get out?
Yeah, no, I think that's it. I just wanted to say thank you so much for having me, man. I'm so honored to be here. I love your podcast. So thanks for having me, Aaron.
Thank you, man. You're doing great things, and we'll pop over and make a visit. I promise. Look forward to coming in with some questions. I'm gonna come in with some hard hitting questions.
Come on, that's right. And I'll just bump you to Ryan. We'll just introduce you to Ryan Steigo at that point. That'd be great. Since he got on first, I'll just bump you to Ryan.
There you go. Well, you all have a platform whenever you need it, and you have a friend whenever you need it as well. So thank you, man. Thank you so much for your time.
This has been the latest episode of the Unscripted podcast with your host, Aaron Conrad, from his studio at the Junction in Old Hilliard. Make sure to like, share, follow, and review on your favorite podcast platforms. Also, make sure to check out my song Great and Mighty One on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you find your music. We'll be back with another great guest soon. We'll see you next time.